Former Michigan coach Steve Fisher announced his retirement from coaching on Tuesday, and former Fab Five member Jalen Rose told ESPN's Dana O'Neill on Wednesday that the only reason his former coach isn't in the Hall of Fame is the scandal-tainted end to his time at Michigan. So Fisher was fired by the university in 1997 after it was discovered that 4 players, including Weber, received over $600,000 from booster Ed Martin. Weber denied receiving any payment to a grand jury in 2000 and said Martin took advantage of he and other players. Weber was later indicted on obstruction of justice and perjury charges before later pleading guilty to a lesser charge of criminal contempt. Rose has maintained that Weber lied to the grand jury and slandered Ed Martin. Stephen A., what's still going on here?
Well, what's going on here is that Jalen Rose is somebody that should be highly respected on this matter, not just because he was a member of the Fab Five, but because of what he's saying here. And I want everybody to listen carefully to what I'm about to say. First of all, I think Chris Weber obviously was an outstanding player on both the collegiate and the professional level. I think he's doing a fabulous job doing color commentary and television, and I'm proud of him and happy that he's moving on and forward with his life. This is not to cast any aspersions on him, but it's important that we recognize what Jalen Rose is doing. Jalen Rose is a member of that Fab Five. There are banners that should be hanging in the rafters of that arena on the campus of Michigan that are still not hanging in those rafters, okay, where everybody's trying to act like the Fab Five never happened. That's personal to him. But even in the midst of all of that, he's not personalizing his attacks on Chris Weber. What he's doing is highlighting for Chris Weber the hurt and pain that you caused to others that were contributors to the program in some capacity. Now, obviously, we have the former booster, Ed Martin, and you had the federal investigation, and you had Chris Weber. We don't need to drag all of that up where he lied to a grand jury and ultimately had to plead guilty to a lesser charge and all of this other stuff. We don't have to go there because Jalen Rose isn't going there. What Jalen Rose is saying is he's not asking you to throw a bunch of mea culpas out there. What he's saying is, excuse me, we all went through a lot together. We all accomplished great things together. But ultimately, we're all being hurt because you, Chris Weber, can't stand up and say, I'm sorry for my role in it all. Whether it was calling out a guy like Ed Martin, who ultimately later died, while the matter was still being investigated and what have you, or a Steve Fisher, who was fired at the University of Michigan before ultimately landing the job later on at San Diego State. Jalen Rose is saying to everybody, this ain't about me and C. Webb. This is about this program. This is about Ray, this is about Ray Jackson. This is about Jimmy King. This is about Juwan Howard. And more importantly, that Steve Fisher mentioned is incredibly pivotal. 3 trips to a national title game. Once he won a national title before the Fab Five even arrived. He's got just as many titles as Jim Boeheim, just as many titles as John Calipari, okay? And you don't hear this man's name mentioned. Jalen Rose has a problem with that. And he has a problem with it because it's not due to the actions of Steve Fisher. He believes it's due to the actions of a Chris Weber. And when he makes that point, and he's saying in order for all of us to come together, suck it up, give that mea culpa to some degree, simply say I'm sorry so the University of Michigan and all of everybody associated with the Fab Five can move forward and we can all receive the due respect that we deserve. Jalen Rose is one of the rare individuals who has a right to make that argument without somebody believing, oh, he's just trying to personally attack Chris Weber. He's saying that Chris Weber has hurt people that he loves, and that means a hell of a lot to that program and to the Fab Five legacy. And Jalen Rose has a right to make that argument.
Before I comment on it, I just want to say Chris Weber, in any brief interaction I've had with him throughout the years, has always been a good dude. Boxing fan, like him a lot, like him on TV. But Jalen Rose is not only a colleague here at ESPN, but also a friend. So I want to preface what I'm going to say by saying that. I think here you have a case of conflicting interests in the sense that you just outlined very well Jalen's interest in this, I think, Stephen A. The problem with Chris Weber, from his point of view, is he dug in his heels for so long lying about it because, by the way, lots of college guys throughout the years have taken money from high school, sometimes junior high school on, from boosters, etc. And you have to lie about it because the rules are set up in a way that's ridiculous. By the way, I don't think there's anything wrong with taking money from a booster, so long as it's not to, like, throw a game or something like that, like a gambler. But you make a kid's life better, I don't think there's anything ethically you can argue. I would argue it's a system that's set up unfairly to exploit poor kids, but okay. That's the system. But morally, I don't think there's anything wrong with it. I think there's a lot right with it, to tell you the truth. Nevertheless, it's against the rules, so you got to lie about it publicly. And after lying about it for so long, digging in your heels, if you do an about-face and kind of admit it, it means you've been lying for so many years, so many interviews, so many moments where you really passionately were selling it. That might be a hard thing for someone to do. I understand that. I think there's a bigger issue, though, even, that, and I notice this at times with, and I apologize in advance if this sounds like an ad hominem attack. I don't mean it that way. I notice this with A-Rod, especially compared to Derek Jeter. I notice it with Cam Newton, especially compared to, say, Andrew Luck. And I notice it with Chris Webber, and I'll put Jalen aside. Let's say compared to someone like Shaquille O'Neal, who, by the way, were contemporaries. I know one's a center, one's a forward, but Chris Webber had some seasons where if you squint, those stats look like Shaq numbers practically. Chris Webber was a beast. But people always smelled something a little different, I think, on A-Rod than Jeter. Even right now on Cam than Luck, and Cam's had more success in terms of, playoff runs than Luck so far. And on Webber than, say, someone like Shaq. On the one instance, the A-Rod, Chris Webber, apologize to Chris for putting him in the category, and Cam, the sense is that they're not being completely forthright at all times because they don't think who they are necessarily aligns exactly with what people want. And so you always get the sense that before they say something, at least I do, I'll speak for myself, there's some calculation going on. What am I supposed to say in this situation? Whereas guys like Jeter, Luck, take Shaq, for example, have so inculcated, it seems from a young age, the right way to be, the way that we want people to sound, that they can just always be themselves in that situation. A lot of times you say, yeah, but they're just spitting out cliches, maybe less in Shaq's case than in Luck or Jeter's case. But that's because they really believe that. That's who they are. In the A-Rod case or the Cam case, I see you shaking your head no, Stephen A., and I still also get this feeling from Chris Webber sometimes that there's a calculation ahead of time going on, wait, how is this going to play? And that thing in the personality that leads to that, those circumstances, I think it doesn't surprise me maybe that he doesn't want to cop to things now that he's had to cover up for so long.
But that's not addressing the issue. The issue is about what Jalen Rose had to say and why. That's what the issue comes down to. And the fact of the matter is that Jalen Rose is speaking because people directly connected to the program, directly and indirectly, were hurt by Chris Webber's refusal to acknowledge whatever role that he played. That powerful quote that Chris Webber gave when he talked about Ed Martin taking advantage of innocent kids, expecting something from them when they did not know, et cetera, that resonated profoundly with those other members of Fab Five because they did not view that man that way. And then for him to be gone and for his kids and other family members to hear Chris Webber speak about him that way, it had a profound impact on Jalen. But then it also resonates even more significantly when you take into account Steve Fisher. Think about what Jalen Rose said. Steve Fisher will never speak up for himself. He's a humble dude. He's going to take the high road. He's going to move forward. What did Jalen Rose say? Somebody has to speak up for this man. This man is a Hall of Famer that can't even get acknowledged by a university that he took to 3 national title games and delivered a national title to. That's a big deal. As somebody that played for a legendary coach in Clarence Big House Gaines, I'm telling you, Max, the fatherhood, the father figure that a coach can be, I cannot speak more profoundly about it than that. And when you have somebody like that who is being victimized and you feel is being victimized, I think the most powerful thing to peel away from what Jalen Rose is having to say, and I'm not criticizing or maligning Chris Webber, but what I would like Chris Webber to think about is this. Jalen Rose ain't saying anything about Jalen Rose. Jalen Rose is speaking about others Chris Webber swore to care about. I want
to address
so if you care about those people,
Very well
and Jalen Rose is saying that they're hurt, that matters.
Max, real quick.
Agreed. I want to address what I had to say relates to this. in the case of Chris Webber, it seems to me, the appeal has to be made to his own self-interest as to why he should say that. Because someone who calculates what people want to hear, what's the right thing to say, instead of just shooting from the, from the hip because what they have to say is what people want to hear, the appeal has to be made to their sense of self-protection and self-interest.
Yep.
And I don't know if it's simply okay to say, hey, Chris Webber here, do the right thing, and he'll be forthcoming the way some of the other people I mentioned, the way, well, Jalen or someone like that may be. I don't think it's enough simply to make the case to Chris Webber, hey, man, do the right thing, say what it really is. I think the case has to be made. This is why it makes sense for you to do so.
Appreciate the conversation, gentlemen. And whether Chris Webber apologizes or not, I'd love to see them reunite. Michigan should still honor those that were not implicated by the grand jury or NCAA, and I hope that happens.
They should honor the Fab Five. It's one of the greatest things to ever happen in the history of college basketball. You can think we're going to forget the Fab Five. We never, ever will. The Fab Five was special. They revolutionized the game of college basketball.
Stephen A., appreciate you. Coming up, the Indians logo has been a symbol of controversy, so how did these guys feel about it? Find out in Quick Takes. That is next. And the Patriots are fresh off, their 5th Super Bowl title, yeah, but someone says their team will beat New England not once, but twice next season.